everyone, and welcome back again to Feral Keyline Designs YouTube channel. Before I start on this project, I would like to apologize first for not being able to update last week. I was actually sick for the whole week, and so I wasn't able to edit nor film any new projects. But this week, I'm actually feeling good compared last week, so I will be uploading one DIY project for this week's update. This week's update is different compared to my usual updated projects. You usually see me working on tons of dresses and frills, but for this week's update, I will be sharing to you guys one of my personal Ouji collection. This Ouji set collection is called the Twin of Heart, where I showcase two different color Ouji sets. In this update, I will be showing you the process of making the coat part of this Ouji set. I hope that you will enjoy this project, and let us now begin the process. We will be using my standard made pattern for this project. This pattern is designed and measured for my model who will be wearing this project set. Let's work on the front part of the coat first. I'm placing my pattern almost 3 inches from the edge. Simply pin all the sides and the edges of the pattern piece down. I'm also adding few more inches on the bottom part of the pattern piece because I wanted the coat to be longer. After you pin all the edges of the pattern piece, you can then now cut the fabric. This pattern piece already has seam allowance included in this cut, and so you can just cut the pattern piece freely. I'm also cleaning the salvage side of the cloth, which has a few curls and cut parts. Doing this will make my process of stitching later on easier. Now, take the same exact pattern and we will now place it on top of a folded fabric. This will be the back part of our coat project, but unlike the front part of the coat, I will only be placing the pattern piece 2 inches from the folded edge. This is my seam allowance for the project. You don't have to worry if this allowance is too big in this process. We will trim the allowances later on. Now, let's cut the pattern piece for the sleeves. Again, my pattern for this project was already made and measured, and so all I have to do is pin my pattern down into my fabric and then freely cut them into pieces. Sleeves cuffs usually measures your wrist circumference. You can measure your wrist cuffs to be tight or loose. Since I'm working on an Ouji set of clothing, I wanted the wrist cuff to be loose. The length of my sleeve details is around 6 inches. I'm also cutting the pattern piece for my collar. This collar is around 25 inches. Since the collar design that we are working on this project will go around the neck part of the coat. After you have all your pieces together, you can then now flat iron them down. Smoothen all the crease and all the sides of the pieces. This also makes the sewing of your project a lot more easier. Also, we need to iron our cloth because the cloth usually used for Ouji sets are a lot more thicker and heavier compared to Lolita. So, this step really is both essential and useful for making Ouji clothes. Now, let's start with the actual sewing of our project. But before that, I will be marking where I wanted the taxings of my coat to be. Since my pattern already has markings where I needed to place the taxings, I simply transfer those markings into my fabric. After I transferred my markings into the fabric, I then go and sew those markings in place. After you finish your taxings, we can now then sew the back part and the front parts of the coat. I'm sewing almost half an inch in this process. In this step, I'm trying to figure out how many inches I would need to fold to get the look I wanted. I ended up cutting the allowances I put earlier. We will iron all the seams open and smoothen down all the seams outside. This step is a must if you're making coats. Others don't usually do this step. We usually works on coats with lining, but this cloth is thick enough, so I didn't need to put lining on this project. After you iron all the seams open and flatten down, you can then now round all those raw edges and raw seams into the overlock machine. Now, we can move on to the sleeves part. Run one side of the wrist cuff pattern pieces. You can also do the one side fold process to achieve the needed process in this step. After that, we will fold the side we run into the overlock machine and then flat stitch it down. Now, get your sleeves piece and then sew the wrist cuff design on the edge of the sleeve. I'm sewing an 1/2 inch in this process. Cut all the excess cloth after you finish sewing them down together. Once the sleeve cuffs is already sewn in place, we will then now flip it on the other side, completely hiding the seam side in the process. Fold the edge of the seam part and then flat stitch them down. This will give you a fine and clean folded finish. After this, we will then now flat stitch the other side on the sleeve cuffs, pressing it completely down on the sleeves. Don't forget to cut all the excess cloth in the process. Now, fold the sleeves into half and make sure that the sleeve cuff designs were evenly matched. When you're finally satisfied with your positions, you can then now sew the sleeve sides, closing the whole sleeves in place. I'm only sewing 1/2 inch in this process. Finish the sleeves by running the raw edges into the overlock machine. Now, let's move on to the collar part of this project. Fold the collar into half and then we will sew the sides of the collar close. The collar is cut into a peak edges and so you can follow these edges to close the collar sides. After you finish sewing the peak designs, you will need to poke all the corners to have these fine and crisp edges. Once you finish this, we will then now flat stitch the collar down. This is not only for added support, but also this will serve as an added designs for the collar. I flat stitched the collar 1/2 inch from the edge. By this time, I realized that the collar pattern was too long for my coat, and so I will then flat stitch where I wanted the collar to end and then cut all the excess cloth. After you finish this, you will need to fold the collar into half and then cut the center point. This will be our notch for markings. You will also need to do the same for the coat. Get your collar and your coat notch and match them together. Lay these pieces down together and then flat stitch them in place. I'm sewing 1 inch from the edge in this process. After you finish sewing the collar in place, you can then now cut all the excess cloth. After that, I run the whole piece for another flat stitch for a more clean and finer edges. After all this step, you can then now clean the raw edges by running the whole piece into the overlock machine. To finish all the raw edges of the front part of the coat, we will then now fold the raw edges of the coat going inside. I am folding these raw edges by 1 inch and then we will flat stitch them down. This is very hard to explain, but I tried my best to show this process in the video. We will then now attach the sleeves on the coat armhole. Once you finish attaching the sleeve in its place, you can then now finish the raw edges by running these raw sides and raw seams into the overlock machine. I'm finishing the coat by sewing gold buttons on the red collar designs of the coat. You can add more buttons of your liking or even add more tassels if you wanted, but I will keep this design simple and neat for my collection. I hope that you enjoyed this video project. Tune in for the next part of this tutorial process, wherein I will show you how I made the shorts part of this cord set. See you all very soon, and don't forget to comment and share this video. Don't forget to click the subscribe button and the bell notification button to be updated on our latest project. For now, thank you very much for watching everyone, and I hope to see you guys really soon. Happy sewing, and see you guys in our next update. Ja!